once we embrace process and once our leaders embrace process, they actually find the reverse of every one of those myths. And so we found, and when we've spoken with our clients and even with our other EOS implementers, that, for example, someone believing they're not process oriented. And in fact, we found that, and they realized when they started their business, right, that they actually are process oriented. They found what works. If a customer liked something, they would do more of that and repeat that. And they determined that's the right and best way to build the product or connect with the community or whatever it looked like. And so they did more of that. If a client was unhappy or they made less money, they did less of that. And maybe they didn't write it down, but they naturally found the way to kind of capture the best practices. And as they grow, we just have found that it's vital to start to write those things down so you can grow the people on your team.
Yeah, and it's frustrating because the conclusion is, because it comes naturally and instinctively to me, and I'm not pausing, I quit doing all the stuff that doesn't get great results, and I kind of automatically incorporate all the stuff that does get great results into my day-to-day actions. That's not process orientation to a typical entrepreneur. They're associating process orientation with writing everything down, training everybody, and then being rigid about compliance. And that's a corporation's, a big company or a government agency's definition of process orientation, not an entrepreneurial definition of process orientation. And that's what I'm excited about. I'm excited about helping entrepreneurs channel that natural human orientation to do the most important things consistently well to build a successful business.
Exactly. And the great news is when we start to share this kind of the shift in mindset that's needed from leaders, all of a sudden you'll see people in your talks or our talks, and they'll nod their head and understand that they've either subconsciously embraced this this mentality or something.
Yeah, so we've spent a good deal of time talking about mindset change and real commitment to this work. So once that happens for a leadership team, what is it that we teach that helps an entrepreneurial company's leadership team strengthen their process component?
Yeah, we did a good job, I believe, of boiling it down to 7 simple steps. There's 2 EOS tools that we use. The first is the 3-step process documenter, which has 3 sub-steps, and then the second tool is the FBA checklist, and that has 4 sub-steps as well.
Yeah, and we struggled to come up with a memorable name for that process and settled on the process.
The process. Yeah. Which we're pretty proud of.
We are pretty proud of that. Obviously, the creative minds are just going off half-cocked. But it is very simple. It is very high level. And our purpose here is helping people say, this isn't going to take a whole lot of time. This is something that we can do high level and provide a little bit of guidance without impinging on the entrepreneurial freedom we want people to have within our organization. And I think that's where I'm most excited about the impact we're going to be able to have.
Yeah, we even spoke with companies that had adopted more complex approaches to documenting their processes. They used Lean or Six Sigma or other business process management tools. And even some of those companies indicated when they became EOS companies that this helped them even take advantage of maybe the really complex work they had created before, so it was usable for their teams.
That's right. I've got a client that's required to be ISO 9000 certified for their desire to serve a particular type of clientele, and they find the high-level process work we're teaching a really helpful executive summary of all their more detailed processes that are there for certification purposes. So let's walk through the third myth, which is that it's process that will destroy freedom rather than a lack of process that has already destroyed freedom. And so talk about that. What's wrong about that viewpoint, and what do you teach in the book that helps an entrepreneur recognize that doing this work is actually going to make them feel more free?
We spent time talking about how the irony or the paradox of process, right? Where the discipline and consistency that's required to document your processes at the high level that we're discussing actually creates freedom because it creates a bunch of benefits for a business.
What I notice is when there isn't process and you don't hire and retain the right people, you end up getting sucked into the day-to-day execution yourself as the entrepreneur. You're in the weeds, and so you don't have any time to innovate, create, grow, build important relationships, etc. That's why lack of process eats away at time and makes you feel less free. Most of our clients, when we start the EOS implementation journey, are spending way too much time in the day-to-day, and process is just a really important part of that journey.
And when it comes to the amount of time that it takes for documenting your processes, we found it takes about a year overall, just quarter by quarter working on documenting the processes, taking a few every 90 days, which we call rocks in the EOS world, but 90-day priorities. And we'll talk about that a little bit more. But so that 1 year is going to go by. And if it's going by in a way that you're building your business and putting these processes in place, then the world you're living in of constantly putting out fires and dealing with the same customer complaints or retraining people or different people or filling down, all of that stuff starts to go away.
Yeah. It's like the development of any new habit. If you invest a little bit of time and endure a little bit of pain, the freedom you get for the long term is exponential. So now let's jump to step 3, manage, or what we say in EOS terminology, LMA, which stands for leadership, management, and accountability. Walk us through what we teach to help teams LMA, or make people accountable for following the process and getting great results.
Absolutely. So the manage step is so that people can be accountable for following the process and hold ourselves as leaders accountable for having people follow the process. And so leading means helping people understand the overall purpose so they can embrace the effort. If you lead your team in this approach, that they will embrace this and run with it in ways you can't even imagine, and actually have results bigger than you could have imagined. So, and then manage means to train, teach, and coach your people, and to repeat yourselves and really stand by their side so they can get the results that you want. Really be there for them to answer their questions, and just listen, and then adjust and do what you need to do to be patient to watch that change happen. We have said that sometimes leadership teams think they think that maybe process is going to fix all of their problems. And when something breaks down, it's not a problem with the process. It just means you have a tool to go back to help people be better and perform better in their jobs.
Awesome. Yeah, and one of the points we always like to make when we talk about this stuff is, you as a leader and manager shouldn't have to hold people accountable, and you're certainly not going to make anybody accountable who isn't naturally accountable. What we're teaching is, how do you lead and manage in a way where accountable people want to work with you and non-accountable people want to quit? That's LMA. And so when you establish accountability for following the process and getting desired results, what you're doing is you're rewarding progress. Hey, great job, you're getting it, keep it up, okay? You're recognizing excellence, high-fiving your people, providing recognition awards, compensating people who are really nailing it. You're redirecting the people who are struggling or failing by coaching and mentoring, and eventually replacing people who are never going to get it with people who can, because if you won't do that, the people who can do it well want to leave because they don't want to be treated the same way somebody who's failing at their job every day is treated. And so that is LMA. And what this does is it erodes the common problem with process initiatives or any behavior change initiative in an organization, which is the view that change is really hard and I'll consider changing after you go first. And so we've got to own it and change our behaviors, and that's what LMA, or managing people, requires. So 4th step is something we ask our leadership teams to do at least once a year, and that's update your documented, simplified core process. And I'll just handle this. Once a year, we want you to pull out the process, review it carefully, observe the way it's working in your organization, look at the world, because things may have changed with your customers, with your vendors, with technology, with what your competitors are doing, and look for additional ways to simplify, automate, or evolve each of your core processes. Then just repeat the document and simplify step one more time, get it approved by the leadership team, and restart the FBA checklist. Train, measure, manage, update. That FBA checklist as a cycle is the way an EOS company becomes a continuously improving machine that's constantly looking for ways to get better and innovate and evolve ahead of its competition.
And vital for update is we always understand who the owner is, and we always have a calendar tied to it so that we know and we can keep our processes updated. And some teams will update, them all. They'll pick certain processes to update throughout the quarter. Some teams may do it over the year, but there's different approaches, but it always involves a calendar and an owner to keep it alive.
We can't hold other people accountable if we're not clear and accountable ourselves.
Absolutely.
Couldn't agree more.